There you go. That was Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, responding to that, that Chinese hack. We heard about this overnight. Let's go straight to Talk's security expert, Will Geddes. Will, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
Thanks for joining us. I picked out a few things, and I'm trying to put this on a personal level for people listening and watching. First up, another 8-point plan from the government. Why wasn't that in place before? He says the rising and evolving threats to society. Right? What does that mean in layperson's terms? Are we in danger of our personal information just being taken by, I mean, he said a malign actor, and he also mentioned state intervention, so we think the Chinese, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty evident that it is the Chinese. Obviously, any politician's going to be very cautious and candid with his words about attributing it to any particular state directly, but we know Russia, we know Ukraine, we know China, we know the various major players in cybercrime around the world will use proxies. They'll use private entities, they'll use lone actors who will undertake these cyber attacks, whether it be ransomware, whether it be hacks, whether it be reconnaissance. So, you know, in terms of our data, yes, Jeremy, I think we're all fully aware that any one of us could be potentially at risk. I mean, to give you one simple example, 1 in 50 crimes in the UK is a fraud or scam that's perpetrated on social media, on Instagram and Facebook.
1 in 50.
Facebook Marketplace
1 in 50.
1 in 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
In terms of people tuning in and they listen to those sorts of world, the world's a more desperate place, says, you know, Grant Shapps, this is a malign actor, this is intervention on a state level. It's a revolving and an increasing risk. What do you say to people? I mean, people will always personalise these things and go, that's my data. I mean, that could be used. Now, obviously, there's bigger issues here, but what do you say to people on a one-to-one basis? Well, what should we be doing? How should we be making ourselves, if you like, safe, or is there no answer? Are we at the mercy of these people?
Well, it really all depends, Jeremy, on who you are, where you work, and how much you're worth. Really comes down to the 3 contributing factors as to where you figure on the whole threat spectrum. And obviously, the more money you're worth, the more important you are, the more public profile you are, the more susceptible you will be to individuals motivated, whether it be for finance, whether it be for salacious needs, or whether it be for extortion. They will want to target you. Now, each of us, certainly our technology around us is getting better and better. Certainly things like 1Password, and I don't have any affiliation to one particular software, but these types of software that we can use that can store all the multitude of passwords that we've got, making sure we've got multi-factor authentication or even 2-factor authentication on our email accounts, trusting our banks, and I know certainly working with many of the investment banks and many of the clearing banks, they're super smart about making sure the software is there to protect us. So as long as we don't put all our eggs in the proverbial one basket, we can be somewhat safe. Now, probably some of the listeners will turn around and say, well, yes, our iPhone or our Android phone is that one basket, and that's very true. So we're reliant on the technology and the software to keep us integrally safe. But within that device itself, each of those apps, each of those services, whether it be Amazon, whether it be Netflix, whatever it might be, we need to take the responsibility ourselves to lock it down. Don't use the same password on everything, for example.
That's me done. Then quickly, just like your response to Andrew, the Chinese cyber attack clearly shows why we should never allow our government to introduce digital IDs or CBDC. Their digital systems aren't secure enough to allow them to hold even more sensitive information about British people. The risk to us is too high. Thoughts on that quickly, Will?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily contest that point, but I wouldn't say it also necessarily puts us at greater compromise. If we're in this particular instance with the MOD, Jeremy, this came down to a third-party contractor that they'd engaged. Now, how they were penetrated, how that information was hacked, that will probably never come out in the wash. We'll never know. But hopefully their lessons are learned to turn around and say, right, we've got to make sure that we lock this stuff down much more securely. Generally, most companies that are handling documentation information for the government fall under a bracket of what we call List X, and they will require high levels of security around them to make sure that that data is kept secure. This contractor has fallen down in some shape or form.
Well, really good to have you on at such short notice. Will Geddes there responding to the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, talking about that Chinese hack fears and outlining a government 8-point plan to make sure that the information of, military personnel is kept secret.